The people of Etheria love their princess Adora, who is gentle and good. But there are times when Princess Adora becomes She-Ra, Princess of Power, riding Swiftwind, her winged unicorn. Those are the times when she has magic powers to defend the country against the forces of evil, or simply to help someone in trouble. She-Ra, Princess of Power. Spirit is Kidnapped. When the wicked Catra set out to cause mischief to the people of Etheria, she rode on Claudine. Claudine was swift, powerful, and silent as she carried Catra through field and forest. She appeared to have no equal. But Catra was not satisfied with her giant cat. She was jealous of Princess Adora and her beautiful horse, Spirit. Spirit was also swift, but he was clever as well. Adora had taught him to perform tricks. She had even trained him to dance on his hind legs. Catra at last decided that there was only one answer. She would have to capture Spirit for herself. Her mind made up, Catra sat down to plan how she would kidnap Spirit. It would have to be done with great cunning. Wherever Adora went in Etheria, she had friends. If Catra tried to capture Spirit openly, help would be on hand instantly. Catra looked from her tower as the sun set and shadows lengthened across Etheria.
That's it!
She cried.
I will seek the help of a witch, Shadow Weaver. With her dark magic, I cannot fail. And she will be as eager as I to bring pain and unhappiness to Adora by kidnapping her beloved horse.
Mounting Claudine, Catra set off into the night to seek Shadow Weaver. In a clearing, in the farthest depths of the Forest of Fear, Catra found the mistress of dark magic. Shadow Weaver laughed wickedly when she heard Catra's plan.
I like it,
she cried.
That meddling Adora and her friends have ruined my plans too many times. Now I shall have my revenge, and I have an idea of my own. Let us hold Spirit prisoner, with Adora herself as the ransom for his safe return. Queen Angela will be at our mercy if she knows that Adora is in our hands.
But how can we be sure that Adora will give herself up to save Spirit?
Asked Catra.
The foolish girl will do anything to save that horse,
said Shadow Weaver.
It will soon be midsummer. We will never have a better chance than then to kidnap Spirit. Claudine will have to help us.
It was Midsummer Day. All over Etheria, the people celebrated with games and feasting, music and dancing. As always, Princess Adora looked forward to the midsummer celebrations. She was going to be guest of honor at the fair in a village on the edge of Whispering Wood. There would be stalls and sideshows, food and drink, sport and games. Adora rode to the fair on Spirit. She mingled with the laughing, happy crowds of people who were glad to see her. The center of the village green had been kept clear for running, wrestling, archery, and other contests. After a while, the village band played a loud fanfare, and everyone knew that the contests were about to begin. They crowded around the open space, ready to cheer their favorites. First came the wrestling. Handsome young peasants puffed and panted and threw each other across the green turf. There were loud cheers for the winners and almost as loud cheers for the losers. The tug-of-war ended in roars of laughter when the rope broke, and both teams ended in a heap on the ground. There was another fanfare from the band. Now came the favorite item on the program. Led by Bo, the master archer, a company of foresters and hunters marched onto the village green to try their skill with bow and arrow. Targets were set up. And to Adora's delight, Bo was declared champion. The people cheered as Bo accepted his prize from the hand of Princess Adora. He thanked her, then held up his hand for silence.
I have a favor to ask,
he said. Bo turned to the princess.
Everyone has heard of your horse Spirit,
he said.
And there are many tales of the wonderful things he can do. May we see some of his tricks, Your Highness?
Gladly.
said Adora. And while the band played, Spirit danced in time to the music. Most of the crowd only had eyes for the performing horse, as everyone clapped and cheered. But Bo's sharp eyes had noticed something. A dark cloud moving steadily up the sky towards the sun. Surely the fair wasn't about to be spoiled by a storm. There wasn't a breath of wind. Yet still the cloud moved steadily across the blue until half of the sky was covered. Then Bo saw that it wasn't a storm cloud. It was shadow. A thick, dark shadow was moving over the countryside, shutting out the light. In another few moments, the village green was plunged into total darkness. As the darkness came down, people screamed. They ran in all directions. They bumped into one another. They fell over each other. And in the midst of the panic, Adora heard Spirit squeal in fright.
Over here, Spirit!
Cried Adora. She heard the hoofbeats of the terror-stricken horse, but she could see nothing. Then she heard a sinister sound. The evil laughter of Shadow Weaver. Another voice sounded out of the darkness.
Say goodbye to Spirit!
Called Catra. Claudine could find her way in the dark, and guided by Catra seated on her back, she quickly found Spirit. Growling and snapping at the horse's heels, she drove him from the village green and into the forest. Slowly, the shadow passed over and faded away. The people picked themselves up and began to tidy the mess of overturned stalls. The band found their instruments where they had dropped them, but of Spirit, there was not a trace. In a secret clearing deep in the forest of fear, Catra's servants had fenced in a space with stout logs. Here she brought Spirit. The gate was swung open. Claudine drove Spirit in. Then the gate was shut firmly. The gate clicked shut, and Catra leaped into the enclosure with her groom. As soon as the groom walked towards Spirit, he found himself flying through the air as Spirit lashed out with his hooves.
I see. I shall have to teach you manners,
Cried Catra. She picked up the whip dropped by the groom and cracked it in the air. Spirit leaped back at the sound. Catra cracked the whip again. This time, the lash flicked Spirit across the shoulder, and he squealed in pain.
Now!
Cried Catra.
Do as you are told, and you will not be hurt. Disobey, and you will be punished.
Catra sprang onto Spirit's back, and immediately he reared up, trying to throw her off. But Catra was an expert rider. Spirit reared and bucked, but no matter what he did, she stayed firm. Soon the horse was covered with sweat, but Catra gave him no rest. She dug in her heels and urged Spirit into a gallop round and round the small space. Whenever he showed signs of slowing down, she whipped him mercilessly. At last, Spirit could do no more. He stood, trembling with tiredness in the center of the enclosure, his head hanging. Catra leaped down.
Now, I think it's time to send for Princess Adora.
Meanwhile, Adora and her friends were making plans to rescue Spirit.
We can do nothing,
She said.
until we know where Catra has taken him. I want everyone who caught the smallest glimpse of Catra, Claudine, and Spirit to tell me exactly where and when. Bo, pass the word to all the woodsmen and hunters. They can tell the peasants and farmers.
And Cowl can tell the birds and animals.
Said Bo. News came in quickly. On a large map of Etheria, Adora marked each report with a cross. Soon, the line of crosses stretched from the village where Spirit had been kidnapped to Whispering Wood. Beyond the wood, it crossed open country before ending on the edge of the Forest of Fear. Grey Wolf brought the final word of Spirit's prison. He had bravely followed the trail into the deadly forest. Keeping under cover, he had crept close and had seen Spirit on the other side of the log fence. A harsh croaking came from the sky. An evil-looking raven flew above their heads with something clutched in its claws. The big black bird circled slowly.
That is one of Catra's messengers,
cried Adora. The raven gave one more croak, then it dropped the object it was holding. It was a small, shining metal tube. It fell into the long grass. Bo picked it up and unscrewed the end to find a paper inside.
It is a message from Catra,
he said.
Greetings, Princess Adora. Your four-legged friend is well and in good hands. I invite you to be my guest. Come alone. The safety of spirit depends on that. My messenger will come for your reply at this time tomorrow.
The message was sealed with Catra's cat sign. Adora stood looking down at the message.
Yes, I will go alone,
she said.
but at once, before Catra expects me.
I will come with you as your bodyguard.
Said Bo.
No.
Said Adora.
I must do as Catra says.
Then at least let me accompany you as far as the edge of the Forest of Fear.
Insisted Bo. To herself, Adora thought,
This is really a task for She-Ra, Princess of Power. But She-Ra without swift wind would be suspicious. I must do this as an ordinary girl. To begin with, anyway.
Madame Raz came swooping along on broom.
You're a very brave girl,
She cried,
but a little magic can come in useful, I always say.
and she held out a long cloak.
This is a cloak of invisibility. All you have to do is put it on, blink twice, and you're invisible.
How do I become visible again?
Asked Adora.
Blink twice and take it off.
Said Madame Raz.
Goodbye and good luck.
Mounted behind Bo on his horse Arrow, Adora set off. Late in the day, they reached the edge of the Forest of Fear. Adora dismounted.
Good luck.
Called Bo as she made her way into the shadow of the evil wood.
I will wait here until you return.
Adora waved her hand, then turned to follow a twisting path that led into the depths of the forest. It was almost dark when she came to the edge of the trees. It was not the end of the Forest of Fear, but the edge of a wide clearing. In the center of the clearing was an enclosure built of stout logs, and inside it, Adora could see the white coat of her horse shining in the dusk. Spirit caught Adora's scent. He whinnied in greeting. Adora heard the voice of Catra.
You're wasting your breath, my fine friend. No one will ever find you here.
Adora found a sheltered place deep among the trees. She drew her sword of power and placed it on the ground, ready. Then she wrapped herself in Madame Raz's cloak and lay down to sleep. She woke while it was still dark, although daybreak was not far away. Now it was time for She-Ra to take over. Holding the sword aloft, she cried,
For the honor of Grayskull!
In an instant, Princess Adora became She-Ra, Princess of Power. That was the first part of her plan. For the next part, she had to get as close as possible to Spirit without being seen. If Claudine were on the prowl, even the darkness would not conceal her. She must use Madame Raz's magic cloak. She-Ra was not the only one awake and about in the Forest of Fear. Catra was so excited at the thought of capturing Spirit and Adora that she could not sleep. She just had to have another look at her prisoner. She rose from her bed, left her tower, and rode swiftly on Claudine. Spirit snorted in fear as he caught the scent of the great cat. He backed into the far corner of the enclosure when Catra climbed onto the fence for a better look. She strained her eyes. Yes, the white horse was still there. Today, she would teach him some special tricks. Catra laughed a wicked laugh. Wrapping the cloak of invisibility around her, She-Ra blinked twice. And nothing happened. She was still visible. She could see in the starlight her hand holding the sword, but where was the cloak? She could feel it against her body, but she couldn't see it. Madame Raz had done it again. It was a cloak of invisibility, sure enough, but it was the cloak itself which disappeared, not the person wearing it. Shira turned the cloak visible again and hung it on a tree branch. Now she would have to come into the open and act fast. She raced across the clearing and reached the enclosure just as Catra was climbing into the saddle. A blaze of mystic light shone from the sword, and Catra suddenly found herself astride not Spirit the white horse, but Swift Wind, the winged unicorn. Catra screamed. What had happened? The white horse was gone, and in its place was a winged unicorn. That meant only one thing. That meddling Shira had taken a hand in rescuing Spirit and had left Swiftwind in his place. Catra made to dismount, but she was too late. Shira's voice rang out.
Now, Swiftwind, you can take Catra for a ride.
Dawn was breaking, and in the first light of morning, Swiftwind soared on powerful wings up and up above the forest of fear. Catra held on as tightly as she could as Swiftwind soared and swooped. Shira called from the ground far below.
It's a beautiful morning, Catra. I hope you enjoyed your ride.
Then, Swiftwind dived fast towards the ground. At the last moment, he spun round so that Catra lost her hold and fell into a tangle of bushes. As Catra vanished into the undergrowth, she shouted,
Claudine, come quickly!
With a snarl, the great cat bounded out from among the trees. Swiftwind had landed in the clearing, but Claudine was between him and Shira. Shira made to run round Claudine, but the cat moved too quickly. She charged with a savage roar, and Shira sprinted for the cover of the forest. As Claudine raced after Shira, Swiftwind rose into the air. He must rescue his beloved mistress, but there was nowhere among the tangled treetops where he could land. Shira must reach open country. She ran back along the path she had come by. Close behind her, she heard the sound of Claudine as she followed hard on her heels. The path twisted and turned. Claudine was out of sight, but not far behind. Suddenly, Shira turned a corner, and there was Madame Raz's cloak, where she had left it hanging on a tree. She stopped and unhooked the cloak from the branch. She put it on, blinked twice, and the cloak vanished from sight. A low branch overhung the path. Shira hung up the cloak on it and spread it out above the path. Claudine bounded round the corner, saw Shira, and with a loud snarl, leaped at her. Next moment, she was on the ground as the invisible cloak wrapped itself around her. As Claudine fought to free herself from something she couldn't see, Shira raced on through the trees. Soon she came to a clearing where she found Swiftwind waiting for her. In a moment, they were skimming across the treetops. Close to the edge of the forest, they came to earth. Shira became Adora once more, and Swiftwind became Spirit. Bo was waiting as he had promised, and together they rode home. A great crowd had gathered to greet them, and everyone rejoiced at the safe return of Spirit.
How did you do it?
Everyone wanted to know,
I was really very lucky.
said Adora.
Spirit was extremely brave. And of course, I could have done nothing without the help of Madame Raz and her magic.
Everyone cheered again, and as Bo looked at Spirit, he could have sworn that the horse turned his head and winked at Adora.